I am Aaron Tomlinson in my lounger again, just kind of chilling and kicking back, and glad to be
Yeah,
here.
luxuriating in rich Corinthian leather.
Yeah,
You got to say it like Ricardo Montalban,
there's a name from the past I haven't thought of in a while.
Well, it's like he played Khan in the second Star Trek movie,
Yeah,
and he actually played Khan
you
in the
froze up on me,
series
Derrick. I
also.
don't know if you froze up for everybody else.
What's that?
You froze up on me. I don't know if you did for everybody else.
Uh, am I still frozen?
Nope, I can hear you and see you, and you're moving.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, man. I got a good internet connection, good signal. So, but
Could be
anyway,
on.
yeah. So Ricardo Montalban played Khan in the second Star Trek movie, and in the '60s television series, he played the same guy.
He
But
did.
he also did these commercials for Chrysler for the Cordoba in the '70s, and the big selling point was this rich Corinthian leather.
I think I vaguely remember those commercials. I remember him playing Khan, but
Yep.
um, I think I
You,
vaguely remember those.
you would have been a little young then,
Yeah,
but yeah, it was like it's within your time frame.
yeah. I remember him doing car commercials for sure. Maybe not that one, but.
Yeah, it's like he and Lee Iacocca were buddies.
Mm.
So that was the thing. But anyway, what do you have in your glass tonight, man?
So I'm going relatively light. I just have port. I just have a port wine in my glass.
Yeah, I got to
It's a
get some port, man. I
port.
need some port and some sherry, and those are the two things that I'm light on. I'm drinking a vodka sour.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
just
sounds good.
basically like the same as a whiskey sour, but with
With
vodka.
yeah,
Yeah, and
cool.
so I'm going simple today too. So I guess like today the subject is kind of like in my court. We were talking about goals, right? And I think that this is really a good time to talk about it because we're winding down the year,
Yep,
getting ready for the new year. What do people do in the new year? Resolutions, right?
yep.
So what why do people's I think I read a statistic once that like 80% of New Year's resolutions fail.
Hmm.
80% is a huge number. And so that begs the question, why do so many New Year's resolutions fail? And I believe it's because of a lack of goal setting. Because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
So I said that this year, and I always have goals going into the new year,
Yep.
um, and I have goals going into this new year. But this year, I'm getting really symptomatic, systematic. The
Yeah.
vodka's kicking in early. Systematic about my goal setting because I want to make sure that I have a means to track what it is that I'm doing. And one of the things that people say, like they'll say, I want to do more push-ups
Right.
in the new year. I want to do more push-ups. Well, how many can you do now? And how many do you want to do?
Right.
What is the goal? And then what is the path to getting there? And that is the key. We don't really set measured milestones, objectives, and
Mm.
ultimately goals. And this is the other thing too is that if you take away a deadline, a goal is nothing but a dream,
Yeah.
right? So I'm reverse engineering a cliche that says that a goal is a dream with a deadline.
Mm.
So if you take away the deadline, basically all you're left with is the dream. And what happens to dreamers? I mean, dreamers don't achieve anything
Right.
in and of themselves. Dreamers require doers. So if you can cast a vision, share the vision, get people to buy into the vision, and then um, and then you set some measured objectives for helping to achieve that, then you have like what you call a corporate goal, right? But
Yeah.
then we break it down to us individually. Individually, we have goals, and And so the same process that we use to achieve corporate goals that make corporations successful, that make enterprises successful, we need to take some of those principles and apply them to our lives.
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, that's my opening.
I like it. I like it. So my thought with that is, when you're running a corporation or a church or, anything where you're getting a group of people to accomplish a goal, like you said, you have to get the buy-in from the people. That you have to have the vision, you have to have the buy-in. So if you apply that individually, you have to be able to set goals that you're buying into. And that, I think that's, and the lack of planning part is not just planning how are you going to fulfill those goals. Like, I want to be able to do more push-ups. Okay, when am I going to do the push-ups? How many can I do right now?
Yep.
That kind of diligence, but also just the diligence in setting the goal in the first place. Like, why do you want to be able to do more push-ups? And
Yep.
is there a buy-in? Is there a genuine buy-in from yourself for what it is that you're setting yourself to accomplish, right? You see what I'm saying? And
Yep.
then is that buy-in for you? So it has to be, you have to have desire. It has to start with desire. These have to be things that you really genuinely desire. And you got to know why. We've talked about this before. You start with why. You got to know why you desire those things.
Yep.
And then you have to look at the ecology of your life, because your life is stabilized as a set of patterns and habits, really. And when you set a goal, what you're doing is you're destabilizing yourself. You're destabilizing the set pattern of habits that you're already doing.
Yep.
And so you have to really look at why am I not doing more push-ups? What if I start doing more push-ups, what's that going to cost me? What's that going to take away from me? Is it that going to take, it's going to take a little bit of time at least, right?
Yep.
The thing that you challenge people to do, excuse me, Derrick, I'm still kind of froggy from.
I know, man. All good.
But the stuff that you set out at the beginning of the year, challenging people, get up, make your bed, meditate for 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was,
Yep.
drink some water. I like those because they're very, they don't require a lot of destabilization of the ecology, right? They're small changes.
Yep.
Now, if you're not a morning person, then, maybe getting up an hour earlier or whatever might be a challenge. You might have to go to bed an hour earlier. You might have to change your sleep pattern, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the only reason we're not doing the things that we're setting goals for is because we've already set a pattern of habits, basically, that are working for us. Now, they may not be working for us in the sense that they're what we really want, but we obviously want. We want it on some level, or we wouldn't be doing it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so we have to think through all that stuff. Like, why do I want this? Why aren't I doing this right now? What are the obstacles that have prevented me? How's this going to shake up the ecology of my life? What patterns am I going to have to change? All that kind of stuff.
And I like that statement, destabilization of your ecology. I put that in the chat and then flashed it on the screen too, because that was one of the most profound things that I've heard. And let me tell you this, I've studied martial arts for most of my life, and my two most recent instructors or sensei sifus were Brad Garrison and Ken Thomas. And they talked about that training must inherently be unstable. Because if you have stable training, in other words, you're doing the same thing over and over again without anything to throw you off balance, there's no you become disincentivized for growth.
Yeah.
And so I love that you said that, because we talked about starting with why am I doing this? What is your core value or the principle behind what it is that you're doing? Because honestly, when we do goal setting, we should set our goals from the inside out, right? In other words, it should begin with our core values and then radiate from there. the problem I think that with what a lot of us have with goal setting is that we set goals externally. We set goals based on we want to appeal to someone, or we want to impress someone, or we want to achieve something, and it's not it's not driven by our own intrinsic value system.
Mhm.
So it may have how can I say that it might have definition, but it doesn't have purpose.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I want to do in this particular episode is helping people first define what a goal is, how to set goals, how to attain the goals, and then how to maintain them. Because that's the other thing too, is that a lot of times we start on a journey and we forget how we got there,
Yeah.
or we forget why we're there. And so it becomes difficult to give your goal staying power when you don't understand these things. So I wanted to talk about some of that tonight too.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. I'm all in.
All right. So I did something because, and I started this last night with the unreligious broadcast,
Uh-huh.
being able to put PowerPoint slides on the screen. And I'm just like, I don't know, man, this is just like the geek in me that I can do this. But I really, I think that one of the things that we do here is we share a lot of information. And a lot of times if it you have to have something that makes it sticky.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that this will increase the stickiness of what we say, and it'll help people because again, and I'm going to say this, Aaron, and I'll speak for you, but I'll also give you a chance to say no, you're not speaking for me. uh, but the whole objective of this is really it, it's it's fun for us.
Right.
It's therapeutic for us, but we both believe, I mean, we both have it in our heart that we want to help people be the best that they can be.
Yes.
And so we talk about things that we think that will help people, but in a very entertaining way. And so this is part of making it sticky. So I made this PowerPoint, and want to talk about goals. Goals are like a dream with a deadline, or it's a measured challenge to do better or to do differently.
Yep.
And so some of the common types of goals are you can increase something, make something, improve something, reduce something, save something, or develop someone that is yourself. And I put that yourself in parentheses because that's important, right? You can be a coach, and coaches at a certain level are said to develop people, but coaches really don't develop anyone. What coaches do is they help people find the tools and techniques to develop themselves.
Yeah.
So that's why I put that in parentheses, because if you start off with the premise, well, I'm going to develop people, I'm going
Mm.
to develop someone to do something, you're starting from a fractured premise, because you can't develop anyone. No one gets developed without their own will.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I like that too, because one of the things I always try to do when setting goals, when I was leading the church and for myself as well, and helping other people with this, is try to set goals that I can control.
yep.
I can control the outcome, because a lot of people will set goals and then fail because there's too many. In order to achieve that goal, there's too many uh, factors, right? There's too many correlating factors that they can't
Yep.
control. So, for example, let's say we want to increase our viewership this year. I'm just throwing that out there. We want to increase viewership on various different social media platforms. So we could say we want to reach 50,000 people this year. Well, and this is just me, but that may or may not be attainable because you have no control whether or not people are going to watch your stuff, basically. But
Right.
what you can control is we're going to develop quality content. We're going to up our game, which you're doing tonight with the PowerPoint, and so we're going to uh, produce quality, entertaining, interesting content that will help people. Now that's a goal we can control, right? And we want to do it on as many social media platforms as possible. Or like with our church, we want to give the best quality worship experience when we were doing that on a
Yep.
Sunday morning that we possibly can. We want to have the best quality children's materials that we're doing. And so what I always tried to do was focus on the quality of stuff, uh, because those are all things that are within our control, right? We can
Right.
control those things, and that helps us focus on the steps that we need to take and keeps it something we can control. And then at the end of the day, you kind of let the results speak for themselves. That's kind of where I'm at with that. So I like that idea of developing yourself because it does put the focus and the onus back on you, which is the only thing ultimately that we really can totally control.
Yep. Exactly. And it's funny. I talked about this. I did my show last night on the scientific method and
Mm-hmm.
how that relates to religion. And
I bet that was good.
I thought it was pretty good. But you were talking about variables, right? What you can control, what you can't control, and so in the scientific method, you employ dependent and independent variables, right? A
Yep.
dependent variable is something like let's say if you're doing an experiment that involves velocity. Well, part of what controls the function of velocity is gravity, right? So gravity becomes a fixed variable because you can't change that. You can't alter gravity. That becomes a dependent variable. But then you have independent variables like the mass of the thing that you're accelerating, the shape of the thing that you're accelerating, and so on and so forth. That those help to change the outcome. But so that's what you're saying there. That's a really good point because what we want to do is we want to focus on the things that we can actually influence, right?
Yep.
Because the number of people, like we could say, okay, we want to grow our viewership, from 10,000 to 50,000. Well, okay, that's a good goal, but again, that involves um, the mindset of others.
Right.
How are they feeling on any given day? Are they going to watch? And those are things you can't control. But what we can control, like you said, is having good, solid, entertaining, informative content that helps to edify the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah. Making
So
this a little more personal with that. A person could have a goal for the new year. And I see this a lot, obviously, in my line of work, but I want to improve my marriage or my relationship.
mhm.
Uh, and the way I'm going to do that is by telling my spouse or my partner everything they're doing wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that'll go over like a Led Zeppelin.
just again, it's amazing how many people try to create an outcome by controlling other people or situations that they really have no control over, and then they get frustrated when they can't succeed.
Yep. And so when you start with why, you're saying I'm going to start with me.
Yep.
I'm starting from the very core of things. And so what I want to do is I know you're familiar with this. I'm
Yep.
familiar with this. I don't know if everyone else is familiar with it, but if you are, that's great. This is a real refresher. If you're not, buckle up because you're going to learn something new.
Yep.
And so basically, goals have to be smart. They have to be specific. They have to be measurable. They have to be attainable. They have to be relevant, and then they have to be time bound. It's
Mhm.
like the first thing, specific. Um, if you say, I want to lose weight in 2022 or 2023, that's a great goal in a very nebulous sense, but it's not very specific. If you
Sure.
say, I weigh 260 pounds, and I'm talking about me here, and I want to weigh 200 pounds, I'm talking about me here, then now you have a specific goal in mind. You're not just saying I want to lose weight. You're saying this is my target. This is where I'm going. The second thing, make it measurable. Is this something that you can apply a metric to and say, can I make this quantifiable? Like I expect to lose 10 pounds by the end of January. I expect to lose 30 pounds by the end of February, so on and so forth. Or if it's like if the increments are smaller, but you have to have some measurement that allows you to track it. The next thing is attainable. This is really, and it's funny that this is like in the middle of the acronym, right? Because attainability is the big thing. If you say, I want to sing at the Metropolitan Opera in 2023,
Right.
for most people, that is an unattainable goal.
Right.
Because number one, the Met is probably booked throughout
Right.
2023.
Good point.
The second thing is, do you have the talent?
Right.
The third thing is, do you know somebody? Because a lot of these venues are highly political. So if you don't have all of these things, if you're not hitting on all 8 cylinders on that, then this is not an attainable goal. And if you set that as a goal, here's the problem. If you set a goal that's not attainable, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And what will happen is you'll get to the point where you will not set goals anymore. And then that's a bad thing, because listen, if you can't go through life accidentally and expecting intentional results.
Oh, I like that. You should type that in.
Yeah.
You can't go through life accidentally expecting intentional results. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, I'm typing it in.
Yeah, I think the attainable piece is really important, and somewhat realistic. This is always a battle for me, because I realize that we limit ourselves, right? Like we're capable, at least I believe, we're probably capable of much more than what we do. I know for myself, I'll speak for myself. I know I'm capable of much more than what I've been producing the last couple of years in my life in various different areas, right? And there are lots of different reasons why I haven't produced in those areas. I think we talked about excuses, didn't we, at some point?
Yeah.
I had to work through some of my excuses why I wasn't doing some of that stuff. But at the same time, like, you have to believe, you have to have some solid belief in your heart that you can achieve the goal. So for me, I want to make $1 million next year. It might be attainable. It really might be attainable, but it's not believable, at least not in this moment. So I want to chunk it down a little bit and say, I do believe it's attainable to double my income this next year. I think that's very attainable. I think I could believe in triple my income, right? So I'm going to start there. And then once, I reach that milestone, then I can, work on the others. But I think it has to be believable as well as attainable. That's what I would add to that.
Yep, I agree. And that's the other thing too. Like you said, you used a term there that I want to emphasize. Is like do it in chunks, and there's a term for that. They call it chunking, right? Yep. That you break things down into edible portions, as you might say. The old African proverb says, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." Right? Yeah. You have to break things down into not just attainable or achievable, but also believable, because you are only as good as your beliefs.
Right.
If you believe that you can, I think it was Henry Ford says, if you think you can, you might. If you think you can't, you're right.
I like that.
Yeah.
And with that, I encourage people to challenge yourself. Like if it's too comfortable, like if you don't feel a little anxious,
Yeah.
And studies do show that anxiety does improve performance when it's reasonable anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you can do better on a test if you're a little anxious for that test than if you're overconfident for that test. Studies bear that out. So the way I try to balance that is I realize I'm limiting myself with my beliefs, but I want to make myself uncomfortable, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, Derrick. I want a goal that
Yeah. You have to be
my
unstable.
ecology.
Yeah, you have to destabilize your ecology. If you're going to grow, you're not going to grow by being comfortable.
Right.
You know, I started weightlifting again recently, and one of the things, like there's this big debate as to whether or not you should use heavy weights and low reps or lower weights and high reps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a guy, a weightlifter, a trainer that said neither one is really right. What you should do is you should take the heaviest weight that you possibly can and do that to where you can't do it anymore. Now that's your benchmark. So you know that I can do, like, if I'm doing dumbbell curls, I can do 50-pound dumbbell curls. I can do 6 of those without stopping. Okay, or I could do 6 of those before my form begins to break down, right?
Right.
So now that's my benchmark. So now I say, okay, since this is the most that I can do is 50 pounds, I'm going to do this 50 pounds until I can't anymore. And I'm going to do a number of sets until I get to that point. Because if the objective is to grow muscle, that's what you want to do. You want to challenge, you want to destabilize your muscles. Because here's the thing, if you're using a lighter weight and you could do it 20 times, and you can do this 20 times consistently, and you could do it like, say, 4 or 5 sets of that, are you really challenging yourself?
Yeah.
Have you destabilized your ecology sufficiently to get growth? Now there might be some fat loss or weight loss, um, that may come from that, but it's not really contributing to the growth, right? It's not challenging you.
Yeah.
So you said it exactly right, man. We have to challenge ourselves. So the thing is that, um, when we talk about the A in SMART, attainable and believable, here's the thing. Sometimes you have to raise your belief level,
Yes.
because if you're expecting to become a millionaire, if you're expecting to become a billionaire, if you're expecting to become wealthy, or if you're expecting to become independent, you're not going to be that by believing what you believe right now.
Right.
You're going to have to believe more in order to achieve more.
Yeah. One
So,
one thing I'll just throw in real quick. We used to call that in the gym going to failure.
yep.
And I'm just applying that to this, right? Like, we're so afraid of failure. That's one of the reasons people don't set goals. In
Dude.
in the gym, you want to push yourself to the point of failure. What if
Yeah.
we broaden that perspective a little bit to other things in life too?
Man, listen, failure, if you haven't already learned this, failure is a precursor to success.
Right. Right.
If you are afraid to fail, success is not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
It just isn't. So the next thing, relevant, right? Is this something that has some relevance in my life? Because, like, I think about this. I've had some health challenges over the last 5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to say that I've overcome them. But I want to lose weight. I want to be stronger. And the relevance is that this is going to contribute to my long term health. Is going to contribute to my long term endurance, my ability to perform the tasks that I want to perform in the rest of my life. So losing weight, and pushing myself to failure in the gym, that these things are relevant to my life goals. So everything that you do should be relevant to something that you're trying to accomplish. So another thing that I'm working on too, since I'm on my PTO for the rest of the year, pay time off.
Yeah.
I'm going to work on some writing projects, because I want to at least finish one book before 2022 is out. And I'm going to do that. But the relevance for that is that if I can finish a book and make it good, make it something that people want to consume, then this could actually be not just an income supplement, but an income replacement. And that's relevant to it's relevant to my lifestyle. It's relevant to keeping up life as I know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you chime in on relevant real quick.
No, man, I love that part. I think that part gets overlooked a lot, to be honest. I mean, I've done these SMART goals, with myself, with other people, organizations a lot, and I think I kind of always, I don't spend as much time with the relevance piece. I just say that. I kind of maybe the acronym's too long for me, Derrick. I'm like, shit, I'm tired. Let's just
or it could be the ADHD kicking in or something.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, 100%. But
because,
I think that
I think that all people that have high intellect, I think have a form of ADHD. I think that just is part of the package.
I would agree. I would agree. But that's so important, and that speaks to what we were talking about earlier about kind of your why, your desire. If it doesn't fit into the larger scheme of your life,
Yep.
Then what's the point? And I know for myself, I haven't taken enough time with that, so I'm gonna go back through this myself as I'm thinking about 2023. God, can you believe it?
I know.
Jeez. Death to 2022.
Man. I don't know who's been doing these videos since 2020.
Yeah.
But it's like death to 2020 and death to 2021. Those things are brilliant.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm going to work through this myself and really, cause I really want to be, and you and I've talked about this a lot. I want to be in a totally different, reality, by this time next year. And I think, the things I'm looking at, I think are very achievable. But I want to spend some time with the relevance piece. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And, we talk about why, core values. What is it? How can I say this? Like one of the things, and people talk about this as a bad thing, the whole, what they call WIFM, what's in it for me. And what's in it for me is not a bad thing when you're talking about your own goals.
Right.
Because matter of fact, that should be your driving factor. What's in it for me? If I'm making a goal to read more, to do more push-ups, to do a greater number of push-ups, to lose a particular amount of weight, to be able to walk X number of steps more. These are things that, okay, the relevance is that this is going to improve my life. Now, watch this. All of my goals are for me to improve my life, to improve my quality of life, to terraform my world, my environment, right? But it's not just for me. If I do better for me, if I'm a better me, I'm a better me for you, my brother and friend. I'm a better me for my wife and my kids. I'm a better me for the people who consume our content. And so by encouraging myself, pushing myself to be better, to improve, to reduce, to produce, right? Then not only am I helping me, but I'm helping others. Because one of the things that I've learned about being in the public eye is that people will follow. They will either turn your experiences into a lesson or into a proverb. So I don't want to be a proverb. I want to be a lesson. I want to be something helpful, not a cautionary tale, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's good. It's true. That's something to think about right there.
Yep. And so the last thing, time-based. Again, a goal is a dream with what? A deadline.
Fine. Yeah.
Right. In other words, I'm saying that by this time, I'm going to do this.
Hmm.
And I remember a friend of mine who he's passed away now, but his name was Gary. And I remember when we were kids, Gary said that by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be a millionaire. He used to say that all the time.
Hmm.
And by the time Gary was 30, he was a millionaire. He actually beat it by a couple of years. I think he was like 28 when he made his first million.
Yeah.
And what he did was, it was not horribly unconventional. What he did is he got his mechanics license. He went to a trade school, got his mechanics license, and then he saved up his money to buy a Tuffy muffler franchise.
Mm.
And from there he just built other franchises until
Yeah.
he made his million.
Yeah. Sad
Um,
thing today, Derek, is $1 million doesn't go very far anymore.
it really doesn't. You know,
You
we,
got to aim higher now these days.
yeah, we think about $1 million really isn't a lot of money. I was thinking about this, Aaron, that since 1996, I have not made less than $110,000 in a year.
Hmm.
And then, you know, before the dot-com bubble burst, I was actually a paper millionaire.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
felt pretty good.
Yeah.
But the moral of the story is that $1 million really isn't that's not really a big goal anymore.
No, it really isn't.
So you know, so now we can say, okay, if I want to make 100 million, now if you say 100 million, $100 million is life-changing money. I mean, when I say life-changing, I mean it changes not only your life, but it changes it changes the entire trajectory of your family.
Yeah, it's generational wealth right there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
you can't be Mr. Howe anymore, or whoever that guy was on Gilligan's Island.
yeah, Gilligan's Island. Thurston Howell the third.
Thurston Howe. Yeah, there you go. We got to aim higher now. You know, it's 2023.
Yep. And that's the other thing too, is that when you're thinking time bound, don't just think about your time. You know, what are the ramifications beyond your lifetime?
Right.
You know, because if you say, okay, I want to earn X amount of dollars by this time, what is the upshot of you earning that money? Well, like say Aaron, you and I, we talked about this. Say, okay, we want to set it up so that when we leave, that our kids are millionaires, right? Or that you know, or that you know, in your case, you have young kids and you got a lot more runway than me. That you know, you want to make sure your kids are millionaires by the time they're adults. Okay, that you have a time limit. You've given yourself a deadline to
Yeah.
when you want to achieve this.
Yeah.
So the thing is, not only do our deadlines impact us, but we have to look further and say, how do our deadlines impact
Dude.
others? Like, in other words, we want people to enjoy the shade of the tree, of the seed of the tree that we planted, even though we'll never see that tree ourselves.
Yeah, dude, you are motivating me. I'm ready to get up, man. Let's get busy. I'm gonna get a plan.
But you know, here's the thing. Like, and I'm gonna give our audience here a little insight in our personal conversations. Is that we talk about these things because the objective is, number one, both of us are doing something professionally that we'd rather not be doing, right? Both of us are making less than what we think our potential is. And both of us would like to set up something so that our family has that there's some generational implications of what we do. So all of that is, you know, that's all part of that time relevance, that time factor.
Yep. Yep. I'm behind, bro. I need to. I'm ready to give them. I'm ready
Dude,
to
I'm getting motivated as we speak. It's amazing what happens when you actually when you actually, you know, make it written and put it in front of you, and you look at it in the context of what you're already thinking. Now
Mm-hmm.
this gets to be pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I just want to throw this in because I've done some teaching on the law of attraction, and I believe in the law of attraction. I do. I've seen it work in my life a lot.
Yep.
But for a lot of people, it doesn't work because they don't do anything. They just sit around and imagine, and try to get the feeling of what it's going to be like. Sit around and imagine having enough passive income that you don't have to worry about retirement or working for a living, that kind of thing, right? And so you put yourself into that frame of mind. I'm sitting on the beach somewhere and my money's making money or my product's making money or whatever. I got this passive income coming in. And then you don't do a damn thing about educating yourself about passive income or wealth. Like, people need to get educated about wealth. Anybody, I really do believe this, and this is going to offend some people probably, but I really do believe with the right education, and I'm not talking about formal education, I'm saying with the right information, anybody can improve their status in life for sure. And I would go so far as to say anybody could create generational wealth with access to the right information. But you gotta do something. You can't just sit there and dream about it all day long and think it's the law of attraction. You got to put some traction to it.
Yep. I mean, that's the thing. I think I've talked about this before. Like, I used to go down to the General Motors building because my mother entrusted me with paying the bills, right? The utility bills. So
Yeah.
gas, light, and water bills were all in the same place. So I go down there with an envelope for each one of them. But it was in the General Motors headquarters building, and they had in the lobby of the General Motors building, they had what they call the Futurama exhibit, and so all of these prototype cars, and they weren't even prototypes; they were just really dreams, projected into a full size mock up, right? These were cars they couldn't run. They had no interior, had no engines, anything like that. They looked like cars, but they were really just kind of, artwork.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You have to get past the drawing board, and then once you get beyond the drawing board, you have to get past the mock up, and then you get past the mock up, and you get past the prototype before you get to production. There's a process to all of this. Everything starts with a dream, and then from a dream, it goes to a spoken word, right? And this is where you talk about the power of words, because if you don't say it, like I was thinking about, there's an architectural company in Chicago called Skidmore and Associates, and two of their most famous buildings both were the tallest building in the world at one time. The former Sears Tower, which is now called the Willis Tower in Chicago, and the Burj Khalifa, which was called the Burj Dubai at one time in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
And the architects basically they started with the same premise. They sat down with the client and they sketched something out. I was told that the Sears building began life on a cocktail napkin.
Wow.
Literally. I mean, you hear about these stories, but I've heard that was the actual genesis of it. That the architect from Skidmore said, "Hey, you know, imagine this. This tall, squared off spire. It's all black to for thermal things and all of this other stuff. And they say we're gonna make it the tallest building in the world. And this guy apparently said it with such conviction, with such belief that Skidmore was able to present this to Sears, and they said, okay, fuck it, let's go, right? And that's the thing. You have to be so persuaded of what your vision is that you yourself, you have to listen before you can sell anybody anything else. You've got to sell yourself.
Yeah.
You got to sell yourself and say, something, God damn it, let's go.
Yeah. You gotta have the buy-in, and people can't sell themselves because they don't have the confidence, because they don't have the buy-in. Like we were talking about at the very beginning, when you said in a corporate structure, you have to get the buy-in from the people that are there. You got to buy into yourself,
Yep.
and you got to, even if you have to fake it till you make it, you gotta do something. Something else, just a random thought, but something else I've done in my past lives. is sometimes you just got to shake yourself out of lethargy, man. And I might be close to that. Like, I would change my haircut every few years. Like people would laugh. They would laugh at me at church because I remember it was a big deal. Like they could tell the phase of the churches by how I was wearing my hair. So when I was a little bit more popular to wear it long, I had long hair. Like back in the late '90s or something, I had not long, but
Yeah.
down to my shoulders, and I had a whole lot more hair back then too. Um, or I would go with like a flat top look, or a comb over, or I bleached it once. Um, and that was my way of just when I looked in the mirror, I wanted to see something different.
Yeah.
That I wasn't doing it for style. I wasn't doing it for because I like change. I realized I'd gotten into a rut and with my own belief in myself, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so if I did something kind of radical like that, it jarred me. Look in the mirror and see, oh my god, I got these surfer bleach blonde highlights in my hair, and I'm 30 years old. You know, but it did something for me. And so, yeah, it doesn't have to be your hair. It could be changing the style of clothes that you wear or something, but just something to kind of shock yourself a little bit out of, again, we're back to that sort of destabilizing thing. I guess I'm really on that tonight, but
Yeah.
just a little practical thing that was worked for me. It was kind of silly, but it works.
No, and that's really good. Like I remember reading this story of this 92-year-old grandmother that wanted to go skydiving.
Oh gosh, I saw that.
You know, and you talk about shaking yourself out. I mean, she wasn't sick. This wasn't a bucket list thing or anything like that. She just said, "Okay, I've got to do something different than what I'm doing."
Yeah.
And then you'll see people that they take up things like race car driving, or they'll take up welding, or something that's really off the beaten path. And man, I was watching a TED talk, and I can't remember what the guy's last name. His first name was Steven, and I'll put it in the chat once I figure it out, because you need to watch this TED talk. But basically, this guy went to Wharton and all of this other stuff, and he was a financier,
Yep.
and he went over to London, and he got rich and famous as a fund manager and all of that, and came back to America and decided, hey, I want to learn how to speak German, and so he did that.
Yeah.
And then he decided he wanted to learn how to fly a plane, and then fly a helicopter, and then eventually he got into this thing. He got into knitting, and he started knitting. And so and this is a thing. It's called eco bombing or yarn bombing, right? Where basically you knit something to cover, to put a jacket on a tree, for example.
Yeah.
And so there was this banyan tree in the desert someplace, and this guy knitted a covering for it. And
Wow.
then he did this with boulders up in Moab and all of this other stuff. And basically what this guy what he was saying was that you have to do things that shake yourself out of your comfort zone. But what he was saying was, when he was in high school, he was a C student up until the middle of his junior year, and
Hmm.
and his teachers always said the same thing. Steve is a very brilliant guy. He would be the ideal student if he learned to settle down. He's just kind of all over the place. And so what he learned is that if you can focus on something for just a couple of minutes,
Mm.
just focus for a couple of minutes. And this is really powerful. Again, speaking to the time bound part,
Yeah.
that if I can just focus on something for a minute, it's like Stephen King writes books one word at a time. But he's
Wow.
Stephen fucking King.
Right.
You know, you begin like Ralph Gilli. He's the guy that designed the Chrysler 300 and the Dodge Viper. He designed these cars one line at a time.
Mm.
There is no big brain to hand dump that just pours out Michelangelo's David. in one shot. There's a process to everything. And so if you're willing to commit to, if you could say as a goal, as setting a goal, that I'm going to focus on a thing that I want to do, something that's meaningful, something that is achievable, something that is believable to me. Start off with better yet, not even 5 minutes. That may be a challenge for some people. 1 minute. Set a timer for 60 seconds. And for 60 seconds, you're going to think about nothing else but that.
Yeah.
And then just keep increasing it until you're able to see a measured result from what it is that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's just all about, we don't do what we want to do because we have a set pattern of behavior and habits and stuff like that. And we have to kind of, if you want to have something else, you got to do something else, right? If you want to have different, like I said, by this time next year, I want to have a different reality. So I got to do some things differently going into 2023 and in several different areas. And so sometimes we just have to shake ourselves out of those ruts, and I love some of those ideas. I don't think I'm ready to go skydiving, but
well, I've never done a static line jump. I've never done a free fall, but I've done static line jumps. Static line jumps are typical military shit, right?
Right.
And so I've done those, but I've never actually done a free fall. And I would like to do a free fall. And then I have some friends that are, that are Navy SEALs that have done what they call the halo jump, and the halo jump is like when you're jumping from high altitude. Basically, instead of jumping from like 5,000 feet, you're jumping from 35,000 feet. And the ramifications of it are very serious. It's like one or two things off in a halo jump, you die.
Yeah. I thought I might want to try skydiving until I talked to some people that did skydiving, and I was like, no. No, thanks. I'm out.
I know one thing, that it's not a joke.
No.
I'm trying to figure out how to make this full screen, and but anyway, I want to hit on these things because time wasters, right? Time wasters are the enemies of goals, right? And so three of them that I can think of are procrastination, unclear objectives, and perfectionism. So before I go into my spiel, Aaron, I want, what do you think of these three things, relative to time wasting, or can you think of something that's even a greater time waster?
Social media.
Well, you know what? It's funny that there's a list of the top 10 time wasters, and social media is number one.
Yeah.
I deliberately didn't put it in there because
we're doing social media
because
right
we're
now.
doing social media.
That's why I said it like that. No, I think procrastination is probably the biggest one for a lot of people. I mean, unclear objectives, I agree completely. They kind of all go together, because if you've got an unclear objective, that's part of the reason that, for me, procrastination is it's either an anxiety issue. You're anxious about what you have to do, or it's simply lack of motivation. You don't have enough motivation to get to where you want to be. I think those are two of the biggest things with procrastination, and that those can both be the result of unclear objectives, right? So if my objectives are unclear, I don't really know where I'm going. How in the world am I going to have motivation to want to get to where I'm going if I'm not clear about where I want to be? So it's easier to just, kick the can down the road. But I like perfectionism, man, because how many people don't start or quit or get discouraged because it's not perfect?
Yep.
They get into that sort of self-critical mode, and I'm not doing it right. I remember, like, you mentioned exercise. So I was watching a thing on social media before we jumped on here, and it's a guy that's a professional trainer, and he was showing how to do a proper lat pull down.
Yep.
And how to have the proper form. And I was not self-taught in the gym. I worked out with people that worked out that got results, right? And I let them
Yep.
teach me how to do it. And then I worked out with somebody that really knew what they were doing. And I got more results in 3 months from the guy that really knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I was going with that.
No,
I'm so wrapped up in my memory. I forgot my ADHD kicked in and I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry.
no, you were talking about the lat pull down. And
Yeah. Well, I was just going to talk about like there's so many nuances to working out, right? But if you wait until you know all of the nuances, like how you position. So this guy's like his big thing was how you're positioning your neck. And what's funny was it was Shannon Sharp has a podcast, and he had this guy on his podcast. And Shannon's a big dude, right?
yeah.
Trained in the NFL, and he was not doing his lat pull downs correctly.
Wow.
And this guy was getting on him, telling him how to do perfect form on the lat pull down, right? This guy's a professional athlete. Now, he may have been doing that for the show, you know, but who knows? So my point is, if you wait until you know all that there is to know, you'll never get started, and you'll never be able to reach those higher levels of attainment.
Yep.
And perfectionism, if you have to be perfect at it, like if I knew all that and if I went and worked out, I would get so frustrated. That's the point I was going to make. When I was working out with this guy, of course, I'd already developed a lot of bad habits, and my form wasn't terrible, but it was the little nuances, like where you put your hands, where you pull from, how tight is your grip, where's your neck, those kinds of things. And I would get so frustrated, Derrick, because I couldn't do it right. And I would leave the workout pissed because I couldn't get the form right. But when I persevered through that, I got more results in 3 months than in 10 years of working out.
And that's the thing, you know, like credible instruction or credible information is so important. Like, you know, you're talking about weightlifting, right? So one of the things that I've been focusing on, like I'm trying to build my delts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, I always, you know, did shoulder raises, right? And I always thought, hey, I was doing them right, and I've always had pretty strong shoulders and all of that. But what I learned was that basically, if you turn your arms forward a little bit and then do the raise, you're going to get more in your forward delts, which is the part that makes your shoulders pop.
Yeah.
Than if you're just doing them straight. And you know, just a little thing like that. So I'm always looking for credible input, right? And this is where we need to do a whole show on this about, you know, the credibility of information, credibility of input, because when you have somebody that says, I know a guy who made $10 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy knows the path to $10 million.
Yep.
But then your Uncle Joe comes along, and Uncle Joe says, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And if the voice of Uncle Joe is more credible than the guy that's actually done it, then what you're going to do is you're going to assign more credibility to Uncle Joe's voice, and you're not going. And when the result doesn't happen, you're going to wonder, well, why is that? You know, I listen to Uncle Joe. Well, Uncle Joe has never made 10 million.
Yeah. Exactly.
So he can't tell you. You know, I always say, like, you assign credibility to people who have achieved the things that you are trying to achieve, or that are heading in the same direction as you are and getting the results that you want to get.
Yep.
So, and so this, the whole thing about perfectionism and is this, what perfectionism leads to is analysis paralysis.
Yes.
You get to the point where you're so consumed with getting it right, or waiting for the ideal conditions or waiting for the ideal circumstances that you never move.
Yep.
And the thing is that even if here's the thing. So like let's say if you have a goal to own your own business, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yes, it takes capital. Yes, it takes it takes a lot of moving parts to run a business. You have to understand payroll and all these other things. But in the meantime, while you're trying to figure out all the rest of that, you could be figuring out what it is that I'm going to be doing in this
Right.
business. So you
Right.
don't have to sit still while you're waiting for this condition to be met. You could still keep moving toward the goal, even though the conditions are not ideal for producing the result.
Exactly. Yep. For sure. Love it.
So you want to hit the comments here, and we can get ready to ride off into the sunset.
Got a lot from Ben. I'm enjoying a couple of red ales. I haven't had a red
Yeah,
ale in a while.
I like
Um,
red ale.
I do have to give a shout out though, because you guys will remember that I said I couldn't drink IPAs. Remember?
Yeah,
And it's been years since I tried an IPA. So I went back a couple weeks ago and I thought, I'm just gonna see if I can tolerate it. Love it. So I can now have IPAs with you guys whenever we get together. So
nice.
yeah, let's see. Ben said he liked really good audiovisual learning. I liked it too. I liked how that flowed.
Yeah, and here's the thing, for all of you out there, we didn't cover all of our material.
Close, I know.
Yeah, but
Work on that.
that's cool though. I mean, the thing is that we can bundle this up into a PDF and make it available, and you guys can read it at your leisure, and that'll be a freebie. But this is just a taste of what Aaron and I can actually do, guys. Just want you to know.
Yeah. This guy, it's a great illustrated. It's a great illustrated sermon, brother, because we're talking about change and improvement, and we're doing it in real time.
Yep.
Every year, Ben says, every year gets shorter, which means that we must act faster. Don't rest on your laurels is advice that must make a comeback.
Ben, time is getting shorter because the end of the days are upon us.
Yeah,
you better get right or get left, brother.
Exactly. I think we got a lot of people out Christmas shopping tonight or something.
Yeah, probably. It's definitely not the full package. My man RL Fire, I guess he's gone, but he says, I'll be taking a pass on this. Achievement is overrated.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for RL and a lot of people like that, because life has this way of really just dishing out ass whoopings.
Yep.
And here's the catch, guys. Everybody that's listening, and please catch this. Everybody takes a beating sometime. I remember the scene from Goodfellas where Henry is getting beat by his dad. And he says, after a while, I just got used to it because everybody takes a beating sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the moral of the story. Henry Hill went on to be this stud in the Italian mob. Even though he wasn't a made man, he became a storied figure. And he said at the beginning of the movie, he says, all of my life, I always wanted to be a gangster. This guy had a goal and he pursued it until it came to pass. What am I saying? Like, I think about when Mike Tyson lost his championship to Buster Douglas in Tokyo.
Yep. I remember where I was when that happened.
I remember where I was too. And let me tell you something. I watched that fight, and Buster Douglas served up one of the most brutal ass whoopings that any fighter had given another fighter. But in the 8th round, Mike Tyson found something and he hit Buster and knocked him down. Now, if you're paying attention to the nuances of the fight, Buster Douglas, when he went down, the first thing he did is he slammed his fist on the canvas. Why did he do that? Because he knew he was kicking Mike Tyson's ass. And he said, I got careless and I let one slip by. Now, there's a lot of boxing historians that said that Buster Douglas got a long count and that without the long count, he wouldn't have come back and won the fight. I went back and I've watched this multiple times, and I don't think he got a long count. I think the count was legit, but Buster Douglas got off that canvas and went on to knock Mike Tyson out.
Yeah.
Listen, defeat will come. If what we said earlier, if you're afraid of failure, success is not in your wheelhouse. You are going to get knocked down. You are going to have setbacks. But as we used to preach, a setback is a setup for a comeback.
Delay is not denial.
Exactly. The only man who is defeated is the man who stays down.
Yeah.
If you get knocked down, don't stay down. Answer the count. Get the fuck up and fight back.
Yeah.
And their history is full of, I mean, if you look at the fight game, history is full of fights where somebody was knocked down and they came back to win the fight and they had to dig themselves out of a hole. The moral of the story is don't stay defeated. So RL, if hopefully you're still in the audience, but achievement is not overrated. It's achievement trying to prove a point to others is definitely overrated, but achievement over yourself, self-mastery, I believe, is the primary function of human life.
Yeah.
That if you can master yourself and say, I'm going to do some things, I'm going to set goals for myself, I'm going to do things that are going to better myself, I'm going to do things that help myself, I'm going to constantly improve, I'm going to constantly evolve, I'm going to disrupt my ecology enough and to destabilize myself so that I'm always in the process of learning, growing, trying to, gain my bearings. Because in doing that, I'm challenging myself and I'm forcing myself to grow. I'm forcing myself to get better. And that's the thing. So RL, achievement is not overrated. There are people out here that try to achieve, to try to prove something to somebody. And if that's what you're talking about, you are absolutely correct. But achievement for yourself, self-mastery is not overrated.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope you see that.
Yeah, me too. Jermaine Thomas says, how does the flow state play into Jermaine? Dude, it's been 20 years since I read that book that was written by that Russian dude. whose name I never could figure out how to pronounce. What is that book? The Flow State or something? I think he's Russian. Maybe he's Czechoslovakian or something, but I never could figure out how to pronounce his name. But I will say this about flow is, in my experience, I'm just speaking strictly from my experience, so very anecdotal. The flow state is the result of, you were talking about the scientific process at the beginning, right? You got the dependent variable and the independent variable. And so for me, flow state is when everything sort of comes together. Like when you're just starting out, if you're setting a goal, you're just starting out with something, right? So there's a lot of push and work and destabilizing and getting all the variables working together and sort of flowing together, if you will, right? And then you do eventually get into a flow state where now it's easy, and success in that area of your life is sort of coming easy to you because success builds on success. Success breeds success. Derrick, if you get that book written, turns into a source of income for you, then you've already got an audience for your second book, right?
Yep.
And then of course, if you're not putting in time doing all the other stuff that you're doing, you've got more time to write.
Yep.
So at the beginning, getting that book written may be really, really hard. But if you are able to get the income from it, that you can free up some of your time or all of your time. And now you've also got an audience. You've also got a reputation as an author that puts out good content. Now you're starting to enter into that flow state. So for me, the flow state is kind of when everything starts to work together towards, but at the beginning, it's not like that. There is no flow at the beginning, I don't think. It's chugging uphill, man. And that's why we don't, that's part of the reason we get discouraged. Part of the reason that we don't push on into achievement, because we never stick with something long enough. And that's the other thing, Derrick, that people don't do, is they don't stick with stuff. And, that's something we've done with Phreology Friday. For the most part, we have stuck with this, with each other. And so I think, people fail because they shift gear. They uproot. You talked about planting that seed and letting that tree grow. People uproot their tree before it's even had a chance to, be more than a sapling or whatever, because, oh, well, this looks better over here. Like, your buddy that went and got a trade as a mechanic and then saved his money and then decided to buy the muffler franchise.
Yep.
Well, maybe he decides, at some point in that process, oh, I got a buddy over here that's making tons of cash as a locksmith. I'm gonna quit this mechanic thing. I'm gonna go learn to be a locksmith. But there are people that operate like that. Like, you got to really stick to something to get into that flow state. That's what I would say about it.
Yeah, and I was looking at that because I had never heard of that until Jermaine mentioned it. You mentioned it, the Russian author. So I looked it up real quick, and I said, okay, this is something I've got to dive into, and that actually there's enough information there for another show.
Absolutely. I should go back and read it. I haven't read it in 20, 25 years probably.
Yeah, I never read it, but now I'm going to,
Yeah.
But that's the other thing, you're talking about sticking to something, right? That when you're setting goals, part of the reason for setting, realistic, achievable, relevant goals is to avoid discouragement. Because if you make your goals very nebulous, again, if you say, I want to sing at the Met, and this is, my whole life is dedicated to this. This is so funny. Like, I'll talk to young people and they say, I want to be a professional athlete.
Yeah.
I want to be a professional athlete. And what you don't realize is that in order to be a professional athlete, you have to be immensely talented, which there are a lot of immensely talented people, but you have to be singularly driven and focused in order to get there. You have to be totally focused on your diet, totally focused on your exercise plan, totally focused on your social interactions. You have to be so focused to get there. And then this is the thing. In the NBA, there are 600 players in the NBA. There are high schools that have a larger graduating class than that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And how many high schools are there in the country? And how many of these high schools have basketball teams? And how many of these basketball teams does somebody actually start on those basketball teams? And you mean to say that you think that just because you're talented, that you're going to get to be one of those 600? Come on, man. The competition is so ferocious. Now, it's not to say that you can't, but it's to say that if you are going to, there is so much that you have to do. And then again, we talk about dependent and independent variables. Yep. There all the things that you can control, you must control.
Yeah.
There is, when you're talking about being a professional athlete, let me say this, that less than 1% of the entire population of the United States is a professional athlete at any level.
Right.
This is we're talking about, minor league farm clubs. We're talking about D League basketball teams. We're talking about D League football teams. We're talking about the USFL, the arena football. I mean, we're talking about everything, not just the big three or the big four if you count the NHL.
Golfing, yeah,
Everything.
mm-hmm.
And for you to break into that is the fraternity or sorority of professional athletes is probably the single most elite of any in the country. That when you break into that, you've broken into something really extraordinarily special. And you cannot break into that without some really dedicated focus.
Yeah, it makes me think, and just it's good to be adaptable, because most of us don't have that elite talent, frankly. Even guys I know that are really good playing college ball, they just don't have that elite talent, much less all the other components that come with that. But I remember the story that Gary Kubiak, Bronco fan, my Bronco fandom is going to come out, because we got to think back to the glory days, because Lord knows we haven't been having them lately. But when Gary Kubiak, who coached the 2015 Super Bowl winning team, coached the Texans before that, he was John Elway's backup QB for the first 8 or 10 years of Elway's professional career. And the Broncos were a dumpster fire back in 1983 before they got John Elway, and they didn't draft John Elway. John Elway got drafted first by the Baltimore Colts at the time.
Baltimore Colts. And you know what? John Elway sat out a season and played Major League Baseball.
He refused to play for the Colts.
Yeah, he refused to play for the Colts.
And Gary Kubiak played for Texas A&M. And I think he got drafted by the Broncos, like in the 8th round, because back then they had 12 rounds in the draft and all that stuff. And so he thought, because Denver was such a dumpster fire, he might have a chance of starting or something. And then Denver trades to Baltimore to get John Elway to come play for them.
Yep.
And I remember Kubiak telling the story that he was on the field first day of training camp, and he's watching Elway just sling it and run around the field. And at that moment, he said, well, I'm going to become a coach. And he shifted his focus from the physical part of the game to the mental part of the game. And he watched everything that Dan Reeves did, everything that Mike Shanahan did. The entire time he's playing as a backup quarterback, most of what he's doing is studying film and taking notes about how to run a professional organization. Like, he made up his mind at that moment, okay, my professional career is over. First day of training camp. Can you imagine? My professional career is over. I'm going to focus on being a coach.
Yep.
And so being adaptable is part of this too. But anyway, we could go on and on all night with this.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be adaptable, and you have to, this is another thing too. You have to realize where your strengths lie, right? Part of goal setting is taking inventory of yourself.
Yep.
What do I know I'm capable of? Like, I know that right now at 60 years old, I'm not going to run marathons. I'm not going to be a martial arts champion. I'm not going to be any of these things.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So I have to take inventory of myself, and I say, what am I capable of now?
Yeah.
And those things that I'm capable of doing now are those things that I should be doing.
Yeah.
That's what I should be focusing on. And so you have to look at yourself honestly, if you're a young person and you say, I want to play in the NBA, well, you have to figure out, what does it take to do that? Yeah. Or if I'm going to play in the NFL, what does it take? What are the sacrifices that I have to make? What do I need to do as far as like exercise, as far as nutrition, as far as learning about the game, learning the nuances of the sport? What do I need to do? You have to be prepared to do all of these things, because if you're not, you're never going to do that. And what happens is that you wind up setting an unattainable goal, an unattainable goal will lead to disappointment, and disappointment will cause you not to set goals anymore for anything. And that's a bad place to be in.
Yep. Absolutely. 100% agree with that. That might be the best stuff that we put out there tonight, because that's real life right there.
And Jermaine said he plays football in his imagination. That's why he plays Madden.
Dude, I can't even do that. Ben says, go on all night. I always forget that you guys are a few hours behind us. God love you.
Yeah, just a couple. I'm an hour behind you, Ben. Aaron's 2 hours behind you.
Yeah.
You fucking East Coasters.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you don't have anything else, Aaron, I don't have anything else.
Good place to end it right there.
All right. Well, thanks for attending our TED Talk.
Yes. Hope everybody enjoyed it.
And I will bundle up the PowerPoint and put it in the chat and make it available to everyone, anybody that wants to download it, and hopefully that'll help you. But honestly, look at what you want to do and set some goals. You won't be disappointed if you set the goals realistically.
Yeah, if you'll do the SMART goals, they work. I mean, they work for sure. All right, brother. I love you.
All right, man. Love you too. Piece of hair grease. See, I took it away from you.
Come back for next week's TED Talk.
That's right.